I'm David Salazar. Welcome to a special episode of Most Innovative Companies. You've heard the name of this podcast, but did you know that it borrows its name from Fast Company's flagship recognition program, Most Innovative Companies? Every year, a small army of writers and editors put together our comprehensive list of the businesses shaping the future of their respective industries and the business community at large. The list, which came out March 24th and is available on fastcompany.com and in our spring issue, includes 720 honorees across 59 categories, pulled from a combination of applications and the reporting expertise of our contributors. Over 3 special episodes of Most Innovative Companies, I'll be talking to Fast Company reporters and editors about the process behind crafting lists from 5 industries and standout companies from each of them. Today, we're talking about television, streaming, and film with contributor Thom Geier, a writer and editor specializing in the business of pop culture, and Jill Bernstein, Fast Company's editorial director, who edited that list. Hi.
Hello. I need to point out that Thom and I have a long history of working together on film and television. We worked together at Entertainment Weekly for 10 years.
Wow.
And we pulled him back, diving into the movie business. Not that he's ever really left, but are lucky to have him helping us with the list this year. He worked on it with us last year, and I don't know how we'd ever do it without him.
So you're kind of an old hand now, Thom.
Oh, that's very sweet. I feel like a very old hand. I spent 15 years at Entertainment Weekly. I was the executive editor at The Wrap, which is a Hollywood trade publication, for many years as well. And so this is very familiar territory for me.
Yes, absolutely. And it's great that you've been following this industry for as long as you have, so it helps us create these lists. And I wanted to, before we talk about your picks from this list, I want to talk a little bit about, from both of you, maybe Jill can speak to this because she's been doing it for slightly longer. Before we get deeper into the picks that you've chosen, I'd love to hear from either or both of you about what makes a company stand out and the process of building a list for these industries. We pull from a pool of applications and also from reporting expertise, things that you're following in your reporting throughout the year. What makes a strong applicant? What makes you decide to pull someone in? How do you craft the list?
Before we get into specifically the film and TV list, which is what we're talking about today, I want to talk about overall about this Most Innovative Companies list that we do. It's like 56 categories. I think this year maybe 57. 59. It is an application-based program, so companies send us applications highlighting exactly, what the actual project or event or whatever it is that's happened that year that they want us to consider for inclusion. But what we look at is innovation and impact. Those are the 2 primary things that we look at. What is the innovation, not just for that company, but within the entire industry? Why is it an innovation for the whole industry? And then impact. This can be relative to that company, but is it revenue? Is it viewership? Is it awareness? Is it policy change? What is it? How do we mark what actually changed? Ideally, it's something that's relevant and meaningful right now. There's also some intangibles that we consider. Is this really important? It's something, it's sort of a gut check. But Thom, for film and TV, let's talk about it from your perspective. When you start this project, we give you a call and say, hey, you up for doing this again? And you said, yes, I'd love to. And we said, thank you. And then what happens?
Well, then what happens is I think we both sort of take a look at what projects in the film and TV space, and I think we start with projects, have had the biggest impact. So we're not necessarily looking for what studio had the best year at the box office, because, Disney having another great year with Marvel superhero films is not really innovative. There's nothing new there to be tapped, typically. There are exceptions to that. But what we're looking at is projects that actually have had an impact. And I think we can look at something like, K-pop Demon Hunters for Sony Pictures Animation, which was a huge, gigantic hit, but was also just sort of out of the box in a whole lot of ways and blending genres that had not been blended before. And so something that's new, surprising, pushing film and TV forward is kind of what we're looking for.
And so we read all the applications. Thom looks very, very, very closely at these and surfaces the ones that emerge. And then we vet them and kick the tires, as our colleague Amy Farley always says, kick the tires, kick the tires. And we also, use that as a starting point. We're not limited to only the companies that applied. We want to deliver our readers the value of knowing that these are definitively the most innovative companies in film and TV for the year. So what was hot this year? What was big? Why was it important? What mattered? Which party is behind that thing that really mattered? And what did they do to get it there? Was it really new? So we think about all these things. We want to make sure that this list represents the year and what changed that year.
This list especially, I think, is an opportunity for us to go a layer deeper than where people who engage with film and TV engage with it, right? You go to the movies, you go see a movie, you're not necessarily thinking about the studio behind it or the company that financed it or the distributor or anything like that. But that is often where the innovation lies. And that's a good enough segue from me to the to the first pick you brought up, which is a company behind a movie that a lot of people went and engaged with and a lot of awards voters are engaging with in serious ways, and that is Proximity Media. And that's not a company that maybe a lot of people have heard of, but they've certainly heard of its output. Thom, can you tell us about Proximity and what they do and what they did?
Well, Proximity Media is the sort of production shingle for an auteur, as he's now established himself, named Ryan Coogler. He's probably best known for directing and producing Black Panther, which is one of those rare, innovative Marvel films from a few years back. He also did the Creed film franchise. His films have earned nearly $2.9 billion in global box office. But he really elevated his game with Sinners, which is another blockbuster film, very much in the Oscar conversation right now. But it's also a kind of not an obvious blockbuster in any way, shape, or form. It defies genres. It is an original film that is kind of in the horror space, but also in the history space. It's the story of sharecroppers in the 1930s in Mississippi. It's rooted in a Black experience in a way that Hollywood films tend not to be. In fact, tend to avoid altogether. And it's a film that kind of broke the mold in a whole lot of ways. It was shot in 65 millimeter. It was shot in part with IMAX cameras. It uses white vampires and other supernatural elements to symbolize kind of real world issues like the violence in the Jim Crow era. And it showcases Black protagonists and culture and music in a way that really has not been seen on film before.
It's a hell of a movie. If you haven't seen it, you definitely should. You're going to keep hearing a lot about it. But you spoke about his sort of role as an auteur. He had a lot of control over this. Can you either of you talk a bit about, the importance of that ownership in the product here?
It's rare and rarer and rarer for a director of a film to get any control over their product. Quentin Tarantino was famous for it. It's not unprecedented. So when, you make a movie and then the studio, Warner Brothers, Disney, Paramount, whatever studio it is, they control it. Quentin Tarantino always argued for the rights to that property reverting back to him after a certain number of years. And that was just his deal, and he got that deal, and it was just extremely rare. Ryan Coogler negotiated successfully with Warner Brothers for a deal like that, I think, with 25 years. After 25 years, the rights reverted back to him in Proximity. It was like a real line in the sand, and it turned a lot of heads in Hollywood of like, wow, that is possible. How did he do that? Kind of turned power on its head a little bit.
It also gives him, his deal, power to control the property going forward. It is his IP. So he calls the shots as to whether there are any sequels or spin-offs to this original material. And that's pretty rare as well, because anytime you have a film like this that made $365 million in worldwide ticket sales, you suspect that the studio is going to want another one in a few years' time. And that decision doesn't rest with Warner Brothers. It rests with Ryan Coogler.
That's really huge in terms of giving him agency over his work and his IP. And it's worth noting, something I should have brought up sooner, is that Ryan Coogler is one of the 5 cover stars for our spring issue, which has the Most Innovative Companies package. We got Carvel Wallace to write about Ryan Coogler, speak to him a few times about his work. Is there anything, Jill, that you can share from that story to get people excited about it?
One of the things that we got to showcase, which I don't think has been done before, is the degree to which Coogler's work is collaborative with his wife, who he's been making films with since he was in college, since they were in college and
Wow.
film school, and another student at the time who he was working with, and how they've grown up together and how they work together, how they sometimes work with the same creative talents over and over again. And he doesn't do a ton of interviews, and he doesn't open the curtain to his whole operation. So we got to see how he thinks about his projects and how he works with others to make them real.
To your point, I mean, like, he's been working with Michael B. Jordan forever, right? Their first movie together was his first movie, was Ryan Coogler's first big directorial debut, Fruitvale Station. I think it's really been great to see how working with the same director and the director working with the same actor has really shaped both of them in really amazing ways. I was watching the Actor Awards earlier this month, and Michael B. Jordan winning the award, it was just sort of a testament to the growth that he's had while working with Ryan Coogler, and Sinners really displayed that, I think. But we talked about Sinners, we talked about it innovative and playing with format in an interesting way, and that brings us to one of our other inclusions on the list, which is IMAX, which IMAX has always been something of a theatrical experience, but we're really in a real IMAX renaissance right now, especially with a lot of movies struggling at the box office. IMAX seems to be doing pretty well for movies. Thom, can you tell us a bit about why IMAX and what the moment is for them?
Well, I think IMAX definitely is having a moment at a time when box office still continues to trail what it was before the pandemic. We're still, last year, $2 billion short of what it was in 2019. That's a lot. On the other hand, IMAX had record sales for last year. Their numbers were up double-digit percentage over the previous year, and they seem to be going gangbusters. One of the interesting things is that their growth is driven not just by blockbusters from Hollywood like Avatar, Fire and Ash, but also from a strategy that they adopted sort of around the time of the pandemic to invest in foreign language films and in genres that you wouldn't typically expect to see on a big IMAX screen. So family films, concert films, specialty films, horror films. And that's really paid off for them. Their biggest hit last year was a Chinese animated film called Ne Zha 2.
Wow.
That outperformed all of their other films worldwide. It's a sign of just how a kind of smart strategy has really helped the company to thrive at a time when box office really seems to be under pressure.
And I think also just going out to the movies has become such an expensive prospect for people, for families in particular. It's, it's $20-some a ticket. It's expensive. And the IMAX ticket is a little more, but it's not that much more. It's not like suddenly, Taylor Swift concert more. It's just a little bit more. So it feels like an event. If you're going to go to a movie, it feels like a big show. It's more escapist. That like little bit higher premium cost does a lot of work for differentiating IMAX as like a grander form of entertainment.
Right. Yeah. Getting people to feel like it's a true event when you just go to the movies. Especially because the precedent that COVID set, which is that you can sort of get any movie at any point online, sometimes when it's in theaters.
Another reason that we chose IMAX for our list of the top 10 most innovative companies in film and television, and overall one of the top 50 most innovative companies in the world, is its technology. Now, IMAX is not just a style of viewing a movie, it's a camera technology. And it has existed for a long time. It's been big and clunky, but this year marked a real turning point for the company. They have reinvented their camera technology to be different. We don't know much about it yet. It's a little more streamlined, a little less clunky. It's what persuaded Christopher Nolan to shoot Universal's The Odyssey in IMAX. And so that will be like, I think, the first big blockbuster when it comes out in July to really be utilizing this technology.
It's also the first narrative film. There have been documentaries that have been shot in IMAX, but this is the first narrative film, fiction film, that has been shot entirely with IMAX cameras.
That's interesting.
Wow.
A sign of how audiences have responded to this is that the 70 millimeter IMAX screenings for the film. It doesn't come out until July, are already sold out
Wow.
in almost 25 of the 30 markets where that is going to be available for the first week of release.
Amazing.
That's impressive. Yeah. And it is sort of like, I don't know if it's a chicken and the egg thing, but we're really in a moment where people are thinking differently about film formats in a way you really haven't seen in decades, right? I mean, Paul Thomas Anderson filmed One Battle After Another in VistaVision, like multiple separate cameras at once, right? They released The Testament of Anne Lee in 70 millimeter, I think, or 65
and
millimeter.
You have things on the other end of people shooting entire films with iPhone cameras.
Right, like 28 years later.
Yes. The Sean Baker films are another. And so there's a low barrier entry for up-and-coming filmmakers, which is great. And there are these kind of maximalist technologies available for higher-end filmmakers to kind of get film fans back into theaters, because I don't know about you, but I don't really want to see The Odyssey on my iPhone. I would rather pay the extra money to see it the way Nolan intended it, on a very big screen with very big sound and stadium seating, and really sort of absorbing myself in that experience.
Yeah, format still matters a ton. Like, I'll talk about Testament of Anne Lee again. I watched a screener of it on my home TV, which is probably like 55 inches. Not small, but it felt small for the sort of vision that they have for these movies. Even Sinners, if I've rewatched a bit of it, and it feels small, even on a big TV. And that's really a testament to IMAX and sort of the ability to have those formats available.
One other testament to IMAX is another film that's coming out later this year, which is Greta Gerwig's reboot of Narnia.
Oh.
Which IMAX alone in Hollywood was able to persuade Netflix to commit to a 1-month theatrical release for that film.
That's impressive.
Instead of going simultaneously online or a 1-week or 2-week differential there. And so it's the power of IMAX that was able to persuade the notoriously anti-theatrical Netflix to agree to that.
We'll be right back after a quick break. Formats are big. IMAX is showing that format still matters, but also, we've got other companies on here that are showing other ways that we're using technology in Hollywood and film, and one of those is Flawless. They're bringing AI into Hollywood in a way that is trying to make the experience of translation a little more seamless, right?
That's right. It's a startup that's based in both London and LA. And what it does is it's created a seamless dubbing of dialogue without the need for expensive and logistically challenging reshoots. What you can do is use the original cast's actual voices to actually dub the film into new languages. So there's a Swedish language sci-fi thriller called Watch the Skies. It was released in May of last year. It was the first release to use this technology that re-records the dialogue with the voices of the original actors, and also applies visual alignment to match their lip movements and expressions with the new dialogue.
Wow, that's really fascinating. I mean, is it only for foreign language films? What are some other ways that they're using it?
It's interesting that you asked that, because there's a Prime Video action film that came out last fall called Playdate. And they discovered in post-production that they were not going to get the PG-13 rating that they wanted for the film. It was veering towards R because of about 5 lines of dialogue in the film. And they had already lost their stars. It was Kevin James and I think Ellen Richson. They were unavailable for reshoots. So they used Flawless to step in and update those offending lines with fewer expletives. It's still the performance of Kevin James and the original stars of the film, but they were able to redub their lines and get the PG-13 rating that they wanted.
I'm going to take a step back. What are some of the challenges of dubbing, right? You mentioned reshoots. What is involved in dubbing a film in a different language typically, and how does this solve for that?
Typically, they hire a new set of actors to dub the lines in a new language. And with this technology, they can actually use the voices of the original stars That is an innovation that has won the endorsement of SAG-AFTRA and Hollywood unions because it kind of preserves the original performance and honors the original talent involved. And it also means that machines are not going to be replacing human jobs. This is not some like Siri voice effect that is creating some new voice for the actor speaking on screen.
Totally. And so does it build an AI model of their voices and then it just sort of deploys it, a synthetic version when you want it?
Correct.
That's so fascinating.
Yeah. And it's also able to line up their lips to the new movement, because anyone who's seen poorly dubbed films notices that the dialogue doesn't always match the lips.
Fodder for Mystery Science Theater.
It is. I studied, 1,000 years ago in college, I studied in Spain for a semester and saw a ton of movies. And I'll never forget going to see Senora Doubtfire. And with Robin Williams, and it was like Robin Williams who speaks a mile a minute, and it was still entertaining, but I had already seen the movie. I guess I was seeing it again, and it was just like, this is a totally different movie with his mouth moving to somebody else's speech, and the translation wasn't exact, and it was clunky.
That's really fascinating. And from something very high tech, we're moving to something that's actually a little old school. We're talking about John Wells Productions, and they are behind a show that I'm going to go home and watch with my friends and roommates later.
Yeah, it's Thursday.
The Pitt, baby.
Okay, here's what I want to say about this. There's a lot of stuff to say. One of the things that's great about this category, we have a video category, and we have a news and media category, and we have a film and TV category, and you'd think that there'd be a lot of overlap. Mm-hmm. And when, in applications, sometimes, there are some that could be considered in various categories, but the beauty of this one, and the way that we've trained ourselves to focus on it in order to judge accurately, is that it concerns what happens on screen. Mm-hmm. You're not necessarily, flawless, yes, it's the technology, but it really has to do with what you're actually watching on screen. And it can be technological, but also really can lean into the content and the art and what is important and what we actually see is moving us forward this year as a culture and how it's moving the whole industry forward. So we have a few picks on the list that really do focus on the content. And one of them, John Wells Productions. It's not a new company.
No, people might recognize it. Can you tell us what the history is and what makes The Pitt really unique as a medical drama?
Oh, I could talk about it all day. But John Wells, he helped redefine the hospital drama with ER 30 years ago. He's also the producer behind The West Wing, Shameless, Third Watch. What's special about The Pitt is, when I first saw it, I know it wasn't the only one, but you're looking at all of these doctors and nurses self-contained in an ER in an episode that's about 40 minutes, 50 minutes long. Mm-hmm. And it's in real time. So each show represents 1 hour in the life of an emergency room. You never have to cut and see what's going on in their homes or them, it doesn't go back to their flashbacks to their past or anything like that. It's very real and you're very much immersed. It's about competence. They're flawed people. These doctors and nurses and administrators and everything are flawed like any humans are, but they're so good at their jobs and they're working so hard to make everything go well. And I think right now, we're in this hybrid workplace reality, all of us, or I don't know, it's very rare to find people together operating at this incredibly high level. And it is just gratifying to watch, I find, at every turn, not to mention really emotional and beautiful. And they're addressing, real things in real time, real issues that we're all, the price of medical care, hospital consolidation and bureaucracy and insurance. There's an episode coming up that John Wells has talked about that's going to deal with ICE.
And also, the first season, which won a ton of awards, like the Emmy for 5 Emmy Awards, Outstanding Dramatic Series, it deals with the impact of COVID on the medical community. It's such a core part of Noah Wiley's character's journey and how he's reacting in real time to the stuff going on around him is really special, I think.
The other thing, in terms of a piece of entertainment, they made a calculated decision to air this, if that's an old-fashioned term, but to release this, to drop it weekly, every Thursday night. Like ER, old school, everybody can talk about the episode they already saw. They can collectively get excited for what might come next. it lends itself toward community building around the show in a way that, it would be very different if this were just a show and they released all 15 and you binged them. I mean, that would be quite an experience. But like if you completely binged it like that, nobody would talk about it as much. But instead, the way they're meeting it out, people are talking about it. And then it works to build an audience because like, oh, what is that? I can still catch up. And then I can join this conversation with everybody else. I don't know. I think it's just been beautiful to see it be such a hit.
That approach of meeting out the episodes, it's something that a lot of the streamers, including Netflix, which was famous for dropping full seasons on us all at once to be binged over a weekend or 2 weeks or whatever. It's something that streamers are now very more attuned to and making deliberate decisions on individual shows and stories of maybe dropping 2 or 3 episodes the first day and then meeting them out. It's an interesting evolution from the streaming area. And in the case of The Pitt, it's really paid off because we've seen that this was sort of a sleeper hit. First season viewership spiked 80% in the weeks and months after the final episode dropped.
Wow.
The domestic audience for season 2 has jumped another 50%. So a lot of people were kind of slow to discover the show and are now not able to binge it. And it's probably all the better for kind of building momentum and building word of mouth as we all kind of start talking amongst ourselves as to what is going to happen next to these characters.
I mean, if you think about the numbers, it's really kind of staggering that after season 1 finale last April, when the average viewership spiked 80%, there were more than 18 million global viewers per episode. 18 million people who all watched the same thing that wasn't Bad Bunny's Super Bowl halftime show. I mean, that was, a big deal in itself, but those things are so rare. 18 million people doing anything together. It's miraculous. It just shows you that this series is filling a niche that people needed filled.
To Tom's point, I mean, it's been good for the streamer. It is a Max or now an HBO Max original. It's not on linear television at all. It's to bring people in, and it's really succeeding at that.
Well, that's what's going to be interesting to watch, too. Okay, so this is a Warner Brothers show, and they were preparing for Netflix to take over. Puck, Matt Bellany, had a podcast interview with John Wells, and they were talking about this upcoming episode that we haven't seen yet about ICE. I believe, if I interpreted this correctly, I think that they reached out to Netflix just to let Netflix, their assumed future owner, that they were going to be doing this. And they had, because it was, politically sensitive, and they talked about it. And then, oh my gosh, the rug was pulled. And is it going to be Paramount? And the show under a Paramount regime would be it could be tense.
Barry Weiss as your timeliness consultant on The Pitt would be a choice.
That it'll take a while for any deal to go through between Paramount and Warner Brothers, if California doesn't even stop it for antitrust reasons. I don't know. There's so many things that could happen, but if Paramount does take over Warner Brothers and HBO, I don't know. It could get colorful in terms of The Pitt.
To move further into the world of streaming, the final company we're going to talk about is one that has made huge inroads in streaming. I think people thought about this company as something of like an also-ran for a long time, and at the company felt sort of sidelined in a way. Apple TV, what's changed? Why are they on the list this year?
It's been interesting to watch Apple TV, how it's evolved. It's been surprising, at least to me, that it's become like a genuine rival to HBO, that it has been focusing on prestige and some quirky, weird things that have become big. It's not just chasing volume. There's a lot of crap on there. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of crap. But there's some...
You're not watching Schmigadoon?
There are great shows, and one of them is Slow Horses. That show's gotten big, like the Gary Oldman show. It's about to, season 6, I think, is the next one. But Apple stood by this show, saw that people were watching it. Interest doubled between seasons 2 and 3, and they got really big for season 4.
Wow.
And they kept it going. And whoever was making that decision was like, no, there's something here. And now it's gotten a big following. But that's not really, the main reason why Apple TV is on Fast Company's list. It's really just a tour-driven, big, culturally relevant projects.
Right.
F1, Brad Pitt's movie that was big. Like, was that a tour-driven film? No, but it was a heavyweight.
It was a big way that they got into the blockbuster territory, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. It also made $631 million worldwide. That's actually more than Sinners. So it was a huge, huge hit. But the thing is that they've also bet on a lot of, as Jill said, auteur-driven projects. So Ben Stiller had this idea for a dystopian drama called Severance. And that show has really found a niche and has found an audience. Seth Rogen's The Studio did the unheard of feat of turning a studio boss into a sympathetic hero and swept the Emmys as well.
And it seems like they know how to recognize quality entertainment, let it build itself into what it's going to be, and leave it alone. I mean, Severance is weird. It's a weird show, and they let it be weird. The Studio has its own look, and it's razor-tongued, and they were not afraid of it.
I think a part of it is that they're not necessarily worried about it as a money-making vehicle. Apple is. Can we talk a bit about the economics, right? It's losing money. You can't get around that. But how does that factor into the strategy?
I mean, it lost about $1 billion last year, but that's kind of a rounding error for Apple, which is interested in selling basically its hardware and its services. So if Apple TV subscription, it can induce you to upgrade your iPhone or your laptop, then it may be worth it to them. Now, that said, there's sort of been a more recent focus on kind of cutting down those losses, and they've raised their monthly fees. They struck a deal with Comcast's Peacock to sort of extend their reach. It seems like they're making some decisions to kind of broaden their subscription base with a new focus on maybe not losing quite as much money every year.
We cannot discount that $1 billion loss. We are a business publication, and that is something that we looked at, and we're like, does this company still belong on this because of that? But because of these other innovations, and because what Thom just said about how losing this money is, they know what they're doing. They know why they're losing it. They've got their sights on other things. This is just a part of their overall flywheel, if you will. That's a calculation that they are making. And one other thing that they're doing, which is just kind of cool, which is an innovation, is that they released a subtitle feature that automatically translates dialogue that appears in another language. So it makes global storytelling a little bit more seamless. So that was kind of neat. And then they have the new Sonic theme this year, where they commissioned Billie Eilish's brother Phineas to create a sound. A sound signature.
That's pretty cool.
It's just cool. There's one other thing that I want to mention about Apple and the Studio that I've been thinking about. There's an episode of the Studio where Seth Rogen's character is dating a doctor. He goes to this event with doctors, and it, like all of these episodes, they spiral out of control, and it just gets totally slapstick and insane. They get into this funny argument about what's more important, and they're saving lives on this grand scale. You start thinking that he's kind of a doofus among all these intellectual doctors who are saving lives, but over the course of the episode, it changes. And he says at one point, and this is maybe the climax of the episode, and I just can't shake it. He says, what do those doctors do after they do that? They go home and they watch a movie. And I have, relatives who are doctors, emergency room doctors, and I know how hard it is, and I know what they do to blow off steam, playing video games or whatever it is, and how crucial that is to the mental health of a doctor and the humanity of a doctor to understand culture and understand film. And it brings me back to the Pitt too. They need artistic nourishment and to connect with a larger sense of art and beauty in order to be human and have the strength to go do their jobs. It's one of the things that makes me feel great about this list in the Fast Company ecosystem, because we are, we have medicine and we have healthcare and we have a lot of AI lists right now, and there's all this stuff happening, but the innovation that happens in film and TV is really crucial, and it is really sustaining, and the art aspect of it is important. I'm glad that we get to spend the time and the energy to to read about these companies and highlight them.
Totally. You know, amid a lot of industries where the focus on the list is here's an operational efficiency that they found, here's behind this. There's stuff happening behind the scenes here that are part of that. But it's great that this list also is part of recognizing storytelling innovation. You know, how do we connect with people? How do we tell these stories in a creative way and in a way that actually changes how we will do that in the future? And that is a really exciting part of this list. And it's been a great part of this conversation. Thank you both for being here.
Our pleasure.
Thanks, David. Thanks, Thom.
Most Innovative Companies is part of the Fast Company podcast network. Our show is produced by Blake Odom, Sam Gebauer, Hawa Otori, and Mariam Kipuruitse. Editing by Matt Toder, mix and sound design by Tad Wadhams and Nicholas Torres, and our executive producer is Josh Christensen. Remember to subscribe, rate, and review. Thanks for listening.